Chapter 59. The Fourth Olympic Games, Olympia, Ancient Greece. 3 months later, 760 BCE. It's time. Jim reached out to adjust the clasp of Bill's toga before straightening his own laurel crown, coaching softly. Remember what we practiced. Aces, bud. We got this, Bill promised with a confident neck stretch, puffing from pride to hear their Greek names, Hermes and Apollo, on the lips of the chanting crowds as they trotted into the Colosseum. Let's show 'em how it's done. Taken into Prince Ampelius's household, Bill was treated to use of the prince's personal gymnasium, actual meat with his meals, and days consisting solely of training the body and mind. As it turned out, the prince chose his champions well. Bill and Jim, despite their truncated training period, excelled at Olympic sport, placing consistently in the Olympic trials. It was an intoxicating time during which Bill almost forgot Jim was a delusional asswipe set on ruining the world, and found himself enjoying Greece, having convinced himself of Jim's sincerity. To be fair, it was a curated Greece Bill enjoyed, as Jim controlled all of Bill's communications, acting as interpreter, deciding what information Bill gave or received at any given time, and exploiting it for his own amusement, as one does. A flag went up, and the athletes dropped their togas, taking their positions oiled and nude beside the other teams, burly young men from the surrounding kingdoms. Bill rounded his shoulders to warm up, raising his knees as they walked to their positions for the torch-lighting ceremony, where each team would run a lap, passing the lit torch to the next team, and so on. From here, they would be treated to a great feast at the king's palace, where they would stay until the games officially began in the morning. It was all Prince Ampelius had dreamed, returning to his mother's brother's palace in victory. Perhaps he'd earned a seat at one of the upper couches for the feast. Tonight, the athletes would eat and drink, though for Bill and Jim, it would be their only opportunity to search for the clock. On the chariot ride over, Jim regaled Bill with the mystery surrounding the king's clock. It seemed a century before, a Mycenaean concubine witnessed the appearance from thin air, 2 strange objects on the northwest side of Mount Thessaly while collecting herbs. The first object was the size of a bread oven, with kinetic parts that moved and hummed when touched. The face of it ringed with strange symbols. Next to that lay the semi-fresh corpse of a half-man, half-beast changeling, its human buttocks already cold to the touch. That changeling was a grown man wearing the upper half of a Winnie the Pooh costume. But that is a story for another day. The concubine carried the god's gift to her king, who made her his queen. For years, there were rumors about odd happenings and noises in its presence, a royal family member or two gone missing after seeking it out. It was moved several times from the courtyard to the larder, then to the stables. Finally, several generations later, it was reconsidered and moved back inside the palace as decor, though no one knew where exactly. All through the welcome feast that evening, Jim and Bill took turns doing reconnaissance. As the night wore on, Bill grew frustrated with their lack of success, while Jim, who'd asked the prince about the royal curiosity months before, easily located the contraption in the king's water closet on his second foray, electing not to share that little nugget of information with Bill, concocting increasingly absurd excuses for Bill's repeated absences. "Here he is," Jim announced in Greek to a rival's couch, "back from another bout of explosive nervous diarrhea." "Are you sure about this clock?" Bill hissed, returning to their couch after another lengthy search of the palace rooms. "No, but it's our only chance to get home." "Don't worry." Jim made a big fuss of yawning and stretching. "We'll find it tomorrow, Bill. We must. Otherwise, it'll have to wait until the prince's summer visit, and you'll be up to your tits in urine again. Come on." Jim drugged Bill away with a promise of mead. taking him by the shoulders and leading him back to their quarters. "We'll have a nightcap before we hit the proverbial and literal hay." "Really, Jim, how did you pick up the customs and words so quickly?" Bill slurred on his second cup of mead. "Self-taught?" Jim gloated, his chin jutting out proudly. "I'm almost all self-taught. I worked as an intern, for lack of better terminology, at a big important laboratory when I was a teenager, and I found, somehow, that I picked things up very quickly. Gifted, I was called, even." "Not me," Bill giggled, taking advantage of Jim's loosened lips. "What kind of lab, smart guy?" "It was a lab for country club types, you know. Rich guys with nice things." Jim's voice grew lighter as he drifted off. "A lifetime of serving them, only to be deserted by them when we needed them the most. Evil people, the rich, really. They deserved what they got in the end." "What did they get?" Bill whispered fearfully. Jim began to snore. "Jim?" "Yep." Jim startled awake. "How do you think that guy did it, sending us here without a return?" "Oh, that's easy," Jim smacked, rolling to his side to face Bill, snuggling under their papyrus top sheet. "He just zeroed out the return coordinate and diameter dials to reset the clock's guide stone. Those clock guys know all kinds of tricks." "Guide stone?" "You know, a lodestone. Your North Star?" Jim offered, expostulating pompously. "Geez, Bill, you really are dense. You see, each clock's directional response is harnessed to the clock itself. Owners usually program themselves to the guide or lodestone, so they are guaranteed a return to the clock, to which they are paired. Everyone else must be in physical contact to be included in that return diameter and time if the dials are zeroed out. Come on, you must know this. How have you gotten this far?" "Luck, I guess," Bill sobered, realizing how little he still knew about everything. When Bill woke before dawn to stumble to the chamber pot, he noticed Jim was missing from their shared pallet. Creeping along the dark shadows to the king's chambers, the only area he hadn't been able to access himself the night before, Bill's paranoia grew. Had he been wrong about Jim yet again? Skirting the royal sleeping chambers, he snuck to the king's water closet. Rounding the corner, Bill spotted the silhouette of a man standing next to the royal commode and shrank back behind the nearest column. Peeking out, he saw Jim hovering over what appeared to be a crude mechanical object the size of a modern mantel-top clock, its face ringed with unrecognizable glyphs, though without hands or dials. An oil brazier held in one hand illuminated a diagram of the clock sketched upon a papyrus scroll in the other. Placing the lamp at his feet, Jim studied the sides and back of the machine while whispering encouragingly to himself. Watching, Bill experienced a moment of déjà vu, the hazy memory of hands on a clock and a self-satisfied sigh returning to him as he watched Jim reaching out, his fingers moving over the back of the machine, evoking a small whirring sound followed by the gears clicking from within. The glyphs on the face of the clock rearranging themselves as Jim consulted his diagram again, nodding. A noise in the corridor sent Bill racing from behind the column as Jim froze in the flickering light, cocking his head to one side to listen to the padding of footsteps in the hallway, before blowing out his lantern and slipping away. Bill raced on bare feet back to the pallet, pretending to snore when Jim plopped back down beside him minutes later, followed by a crinkling sound as Jim slid the scroll into his satchel beneath the bed, just as the cocks began to crow.